Greetings and welcome to HillCrest Wine Club video notes. This is the first shipment of the season of the 25-26 year, and we're starting off with a bang actually with 4 different wines that depending on what club you're in, you'll get at least 2 of these, maybe more. So anyway, we'll get started. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about vintage. I had an interesting discussion at a dinner the other night about how significant vintage is. And it's one of the things that really separates fine wine from everyday wine. You know, we are, I think, the only winery in Umpqua Valley we use no adjuncts. So if it wasn't used 100 years ago, we don't use it. What you see more and more is wines being, I say processed. It's like processed food, literally, that there are many additives. There's hundreds of additives that you can add to wine to give you color, flavor, texture, body. And so what's being done is that wines are basically being made to a certain point. And that's nice, but the French have a saying that nobody writes a poem about milk. And so the concept is great wine should tell you a story. It should tell you the story of the people, the grape, the place, but also the vintage. And that's part of what we really try to do is you know, when you walk in and you taste our wines, people say, I like the wines, but everyone's so different. To me, that's a great compliment. And that's because we tend to grow wine instead of making wine, and it's really our role inside is really about human selection. So we're going to kind of bend that into what we taste here and apply it. We're going to do 21. This is a brand new release, 21 Tempranillo Reserve. That's super spectacular. Just 100 cases of that produced. Then we're going to get into, you know, our Poboleda that we do in the Low Americano. Well, we do that with a dear friend of ours, Jordy, at a winery called Genium, and for reasons I won't go into just because of time in that, we have started bringing in a little bit of his wine just because the market that he goes into is really kind of tightened up and kind of slowed down a little bit. But he makes very beautiful wines off of the same vineyards. But the thing is that it really manifests the difference in style of palate that they have in the cultural palate. And it's much like accents, where different cultures have different accents. The same thing, you give the same grapes to a bunch of different winemakers, different parts of the world. You end up with very different results because of this, whatever that is. We're going to finish up with a revisit of 21 Carlo Schmidt Riesling out of the Mosel. That's spectacular. So we're going to start with the 21 and finish with the 21. So let's get started. This is our first estate Tempranillo. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create like a little bit of a range of styles. We have the Cadiz or Cadiz that many of you are familiar with. That's a very classic kind of old world, elegant style, very tight. And so if a wine has architecture, that kind of comes across the palate, kind of silent but very deep. When you look at the estate, the plan is to kind of bridge that with a little bit more fleshiness and richness, but to have the wine kind of come in and open up gently, have this nice kind of richer, sweeter fruit, perhaps we might say, instead of the first wine having kind of a tighter fruit. And then the El Grande that we know that we do occasionally, and that's very kind of succulent, you know, so it's almost like a flower that's wide open and it shows you everything, and it's sweet and round and structured and the whole thing. So anyway, Temp Reserve, this was 3 years in barrel, which is about 2 years longer than most, you know, speaking to what we do, letting wines kind of age, integrate in that and kind of the old style. But first thing I pick up this really deep, beautiful plum that's very kind of black, sweet character, and then on the back end of that is this crimson, that kind of tartness a little bit. And it's hard to get acidity in Tempranillo. It tends to be a low acid grape, and this has that, when I talk about that crimson tart, it's a smell of like a crimson plum, but the other side of it is I get this kind of like acid smell that makes me salivate. That's really beautiful. In there as well, I get a little bit of like a sweet vanilla from the wood that's very gentle and spiciness and a little bit of like an earthy, smoky. The French have a term called sous bois, which is turning a log over in the forest, and has that little bit of undergrowth kind of character in the nose. So, deep but elegant, fills up the entire palate. Tannins are just beginning to hit in the wood in that right now, but really a wine of richness, but it's not overwhelming. So it doesn't have huge impact. It's very elegant. And you try to make a wine, one of the hardest things about fine winemaking is you want to make a wine that the flavors are interesting but not overwhelming, so that when you finish a bottle of wine to people, that you still want a little bit more, and that the wine is not like scotch that has so much impact that 1 or 2 glasses is enough and you have a hard time finishing the bottle, which for most of you I'm sure is not a problem, including myself. So I always say if 2 people can't finish a bottle of wine, it's either not good wine or we'll leave it. Okay, so what we're going to get into now, these are both Grenache Carignan with a little bit of Syrah, same vineyards, It's the 2015, 2017. So if you're in the international club, you're going to get a bottle of each. And the idea is to show you the difference in vintage. The vintages have kind of a one particular variable that changed that you can taste. I can taste in the wines. But 2015, 2017, the Carignan here is over 100 years old. The Grenache is over 60. And so this is considered very old vine. Lowest yields in the world are this area. We'll do the Pobelate in that again. This is an ingredient basically crafted by Jordy. And so what I want to do is I want to smell. We're going to take the 15 and then I'll come back and we'll taste the 17. So 15 is a warm year but not a hot year, and everything is relative. So Priorat, the wine region, is the southwestern part of the Pyrenees, just north of Barcelona a little bit. And I can smell the ripeness, I can smell the sun, kind of there's a sweeter fruit character to it. Still a beautiful kind of earthy component to it. But I can tell it's generous in the nose. It's kind of deep, but it's generous. So actually, it's kind of as sweet as the fruit is in the nose, the wine has quite a bit of depth and quite a bit of structure. Usually, the warmer the vintage, the more the wine kind of folds out and splays out. And if you think about, I like to use the analogy of like a peach or something, that at the early stages of ripeness, it's crisp and kind of tighter and brighter. And as it becomes riper and almost to the point of overripe, it becomes really soft. A lot of warm areas are challenged by so much heat that the wines become kind of splayed out and kind of flat a little bit. This is beautiful actually for a warm vintage, not hot. This is a vintage that started off very warm, but then at the harvest, there was a little bit, or late summer, I should say, even before harvest, there's a little bit of rain. And oftentimes the wine growers consider that to be a negative thing, but in really warm, dry areas, it's actually nice because it oftentimes freshens things up. Here in the Umpqua Valley, we've had a very, very dry season, and there's the forecast for a little bit of rain coming up, and a lot of people are panicked. And we have like 1 or 2 days of like potential showers and that, and I look at it as a great thing. Washes the dust off the leaves, so photosynthesis is more active, but it kind of freshens things up, and a little bit of water when it's this dry does nothing really. But anyway, beautiful, so kind of blacker, tighter fruit. We're gonna move to this 2017, and where 15 is a warmer vintage, 17's hot. So it had a warm, dry beginning, a blast in July that was really, really hot, and then it remained dry for the rest and hot for the rest of the season. So this finish is dry. And the later you get in the season, the more important that weather is, because like a tomato, once again, all the flavors in that are developed at the end. So that time period is everything. That's the most important part of the growing season, is that very end when flavor, sweetness, and all that are being created. So anyway, I would expect this to be a little softer, more generous. And it is like, it's sweet in the nose. Once again, has this beautiful kind of sweet fruit, almost a little bit of like anise maybe. So once again, it's rich across the palate, but it is a little bit sweeter in the mouth in terms of the fruit, and softer. I'd say a little bit more feminine, the 17. And I think, once again, it's that flower analogy. The 15 is a little bit kind of tighter, more structured, kind of deeper, darker. And the 17 is kind of more soft and elegant and sweeter, but still has beautiful kind of texture. There's beautiful like acidity and tannin at the end, which is important for a classic wine if you want the wine to age and develop in the bottle, also to show very well at the table. But both very, very beautiful, but there's the hedonistic side of wine, but there's also the intellectual that's very fascinating to see how the same vineyards in a different vintage, how they react. And that difference in Mother Nature is absolutely fantastic. And that's actually the most exciting thing for me. I like to drink a lot of unusual varieties, unusual places, different vintages, and just see that. And it's almost, if you do enough of that, it's like teaching somebody to read a book. To finish up with, and many of you know this story. Susan and I, the first place we worked overseas was Mosel Valley of Germany. In '87 for a small little winery that was a great winery, been in business 300 years. We were the first employees they ever had. We worked for a gentleman by the name of Heinz Schmidt, and he'd worked the year before for me at Pine Ridge. And we've gone back almost every year since. We're headed here actually tomorrow morning back into Mosel to liven the little village. And Heinz unfortunately has passed away, but his son, Carlo, has turned into quite the winemaker and produces super beautiful wine. I know many of you have had some of the prior vintages we've brought in. But this is the 21, and we've had this once before, but this wine is showing beautifully. Really beautiful, beautiful Riesling. When it's young, if it's classic style, you'll get the sweetness and the acidity here, and then as the wine ages, it kind of falls into line, and this wine is just getting there now. This wine is becoming super beautiful. There's a beautiful tension between the sweet fruit and the acidity that's really nice, with just a hint of like carbonation, what the French call pétant, or the Italians call frizzante, that's just kind of a little prickliness on the tongue, which is something you see a lot in European whites you don't see in America. That's just kind of a cultural difference as to what people like. In the nose, it's beautiful. It's got this tanginess to it of, I think of like apricot, almost like kumquat, something that's sweet and soft, but then you get this kind of beautiful, kind of acidic character on the back end. And it's ripe and lush. It's so nice. You know, my favorite wines of the world, if I had to drink one, would be definitely the Great Mosel Rieslings. This is spectacular. So gentle, fresh, long, just this beautiful, beautiful wine. We had this the other night with a salad, balsamic salad based with greens and some other things, goat cheese and that was just really spectacular. And that acidity, you know, it's interesting. People often say things like salad with a vinaigrette, wines don't go with them. High acid wines do. And so when you have a food that's high acid, to have a wine with high acid is a complementary setup that's just spectacular. This is really nice. So anyway, we hope you enjoy these wines. Thank you for following us, and more than anything, thank you for your support, because you make our family's dream possible. So with that, we look forward to having some beautiful wines. We're getting ready to bottle. We've bottled a little bit. We've got some other stuff we're putting in the bottle that's really spectacular. So we look forward to vintages to come. And with that, we'll say to the genie in the bottle, cheers.